Welcome to this ultimate session of the kickoff days of our 12th ÖGMBT Annual Meeting. And as you see in the program broadcasted right now, we've had three great and very interesting, scientifically interesting scientific sessions in the mornings. We have had for 3 days in a row scientific sessions on corona research in Austria, on cryo-EM and healthy aging in the morning sessions. And we've had very interactive afternoon sessions always. On the one hand side, the Life Scientists Awards Austria on Monday, and yesterday an introduction into the Life Science Tuesdays, which will happen bi-weekly starting October 6th until March 23rd, 2021. And we've had the kickoff of the virtual expo where our company partners present themselves in the virtual rooms. And today we will have another very interesting session, the career opportunity session, which has become a tradition in our annual meetings. It will be thus the kickoff of this virtual life science career fair. And what is most remarkable, and you've seen it, I've proven it more or less, we also stream on YouTube live. We always did it for the afternoon sessions. And with this, I also welcome everybody listening to us on YouTube. And without further ado, I would stop my presentation and pass on to the chairs of today's session, especially I think it is Pascal Müllner.
I'm co-chairing this session until Pascal has solved his technical issues. My name is Felix Locker. I'm from the YLSA and the YLSA speaker. We are part of the ÖGMBT, the Young Life Scientists Austria, and we are always co-organizing these sessions. Also, we did at the last General Assembly. And what I want to make you aware of that we will be later at the career fair also with a booth where you can visit us and chat with us and get some additional information on what the YLSA is and what the ÖGMBT in general has to offer. And yeah, with this, I think now I can give it to Pascal when he's here now. Not yet. Then I use the time and tell you what we are doing at the YLSA. In general, we are organizing events like company visits, social get-togethers, out-of-the-box talks in order to get some ideas for young participants of the ÖGMBT, also for younger students, PhD students, younger postdocs, what's out there, also which possibilities there are beside academia, and also to get in touch with companies and to get some insights, because we had this opinion that very often the people were somehow in their bubble and didn't know what to do after this. And we had very good experiences with the company visits and the out-of-the-box talks, because it opens your mind a little bit and you get an idea what to do afterwards. And what we especially like is the social events. So now Corona, in the Corona times, we did it more often online. Before we went out and got a beer or went to the Christmas market in order to talk about general stuff, also to solve some lab issues, because we are at the PhD stage, at least all somehow in a research environment, and some problems, Western blot issues or whatever, are discussed nicely when you have some young colleagues around and no pressure from the PIs, so to say. And yeah, that's it. Visit us at the career fair. And
okay, I think I'll pitch in for Pascal, who's still having some technical problems. My name is Andrea Bauer from the ÖGMBT office, and Pascal was first of all going to introduce you to this afternoon's program, which will be that we will have 3 talks by invited speakers presenting their careers. They will be speaking each 10 minutes and with 5 minutes Q&A. I see Pascal is here, so I can resign and hand over. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I had some internet connectivity problems, so I hope it will be fine now. So I don't know what you've already said, but it is my pleasure to also announce the 3 following speakers. It's a great honor to have these 3 persons who made their career in life sciences and will share their experience, motivation, and professional development with us. And I hope that some of you also have some questions for us, so feel free to post your questions in the chat. And after every presentation, there will be some time for questions. And then after the free presentation in the second hour, we have the opening of our virtual career fair. And we'll get further insights starting from 4 p.m. on. So first, I want to introduce you to Dr. Karin Schaupp. She studied pharmaceutical chemistry and received her doctorate at the Karl Franz University in Graz. And then she had already 23 years of industrial experience from department head, then, if I remember correctly, to the first member of the board of a pharma company in Europe, in Fresenius Kabi. I also, in my studies, I also had the pleasure to be participate in one of her lectures. It was really interesting. And since 2003, she's a self-employed consultant at the interface between science, business, with a focus on innovation and corporate development. So Dr. Schaupp, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Pascal. A warm welcome from my side, and try to cruise a little bit through career possibilities of big pharma. Since you will hear from my colleagues a little bit about biotech possibilities and startups, and also medtech. So my career was basically in big pharma, and I would like to show you on my pathway through my experience that how many possibilities there is for life science in the big pharma, which you probably do not even sense, because there's a lot of activities in the big pharma, from research of molecules up to making really a product that is marketed. I started basically I was a researcher at the university, and just to give you also a little bit of the way how one should make career planning, in the sense that you don't plan at all. It was on the same day that I received my university career path, that on the same day I saw an announcement of a little pharmaceutical company that was based in Graz. I wasn't even aware of that company. And I just had the feeling, my God, I didn't even know that there was a pharmaceutical company existing here. So I applied for head of analytics, which basically, since I was studying pharmaceutical science in Graz, and I got the job. So this is how I started, having no idea of how far this would lead. And I was allowed to develop a research group in this little company, because I just saw that the way this little company was making new development was not very structured. So I asked whether I could do it in a more structured way, and I was allowed to build up a research group. And basically I became the head of it. So this is the benefit if you start things. But this just shows that you never know where it leads to, if you are just engaged, if you are raise your hands, and if you trust in yourself. And within this career, small companies in pharmaceutical, big pharma usually are sold. So I was sold twice. And this is quite stressy, because you never know what happens. And I just trusted that basically the research we did was so good that we could also perform well in the big new owners. And so it happened that I became responsible in a bigger pharma group, which was formerly a BASF affiliate. And so I became responsible basically for this infusion therapy in intensive care medicine. And from there, I was sold again. And so the same story started. And it was quite difficult because I was first in my life confronted that basically a process was applied where I was not familiar with. This was a bidding process. This means that one was really in a contest which company would buy us and which basically would decide upon the further being of myself, to be honest. And I was lucky, but I think it was also that the group that I belonged to did a very good job. And so I was also in this new group, I was allowed to lead a research group, and which was still based in Graz. And this was basically the surprising thing, because normally if you are bought by a big company, a bigger company, then all things are transferred. And we were fighting like hell, showing that we were really good. And this fighting ended, that the research group for this infusion therapy was established in Graz, and the group in Graz grew from formerly 80 people to about 200. And at this time, I thought that I had basically learned enough to change from research into management. And during all my activities, I was allowed to learn a lot also on how to lead a group, how to do both project management. I learned about finances and budgeting. And so lucky enough, by the time I think it was in 1997, I became manager of the Austrian affiliate together with a colleague in Austria. So it's also something that probably was a bit surprising to change from research and development into management. And from there, I was responsible finally for classical Austria, Eastern Europe. And then, which is probably not so common, I became member of the board of Fresenius Kabi with a worldwide business responsibility. So this is a very short lane to see what possibilities there are. And I think one of the secrets is, on the one side, that pharmaceutical industry offers so many different possibilities. If you're a researcher, you can be in molecule designing, you can be in drug development. And if you're more project manager type, and if you are not hesitant to learning all the rules, because pharmaceutical industry is probably one of the most regulated industries in the world, that everything you have learned at the university is only a basis for what you are doing later, because everything is molded into a corset of rules. Everything you do has to obey certain rules, otherwise the final product will not receive approval from the authorities. So it's a very wide span of opportunities, and the only advice and what I could give you is, whenever you see an announcement in pharmaceutical industry or in medtech or in biotech, and if you feel, oh, that's not really what I know, apply. Because you would have no ideas what opportunities you would have, and maybe you do something totally different. But if you're open-minded and if you trust in your abilities. And the second thing is, in pharmaceutical industry, you have to be flexible and mobile. Pharmaceutical industry is international. It's not local, it's international. So you have to be aware that you have to fly a lot, that you have to stay at very different areas, but it's probably one of the most fascinating opportunities you can have. So if this is fine with all the managers now of this meeting. Could we move over to Q&A, or should I do something more about possibilities? Pascal?
So thank you, Dr. Schaupp, for this interesting insight. I have no questions currently from the participants, okay. But then I would start with a question. So what I would be interested, you also said that you have to be flexible and motile, of course, but back when you said you started and you considered starting your academic career and then moving into industry, what made you choose industry before academia?
Oh, it was maybe I'm a management type of person. I like to change things. I like to move things along. So I just got the feeling that I was simply curious. And I just got the feeling that this would fit more to my personality. And this is why I simply applied. And probably this was also a prerequisite that I changed so many times my responsibilities. So I think it's also to ask yourself, are you the type of really digging into problems very deeply and staying rather at the same area, or are you ready to move? Are you ready to manage groups and learn? So I think it was just I don't know whether I had all these thoughts at that time. It was very spontaneous.
Yeah, I think you also have to be a bit spontaneous for this,
I think
for your career.
And maybe to say this true, even probably my career was not very common in the sense that I changed so many times that I was sold and everything. This was still in times where you stayed basically within one company all your life. I think with you all who are listening now, this definitely will not be the case. So today there is a lot of change going on all the time. So probably you will not stay in one place for all of your life. And one has to face this, that you have to be flexible and to cope with all the situations. I mean, we see it right now that we are all fighting, and even I myself have to fight with video and try to learn it.
Yeah, I have some questions from the chat. So Clara Obrova says, a very impressive career. Do you get to use your research background in the management roles?
Yes, absolutely. So if whatever business it is, but of course, pharmaceutical industry, medtech, biotech are research-based industries. So I think without my research background and without all the steps that I did, I was responsible for manufacturing, I was responsible for analytics, I was responsible for clinical research. It's the basic understanding how this industry works. So with the exception of maybe the legal departments and the finance departments in pharmaceutical industries, if you make a career on the research side, this is absolutely necessary that you have a research background. Otherwise, you wouldn't understand the language.
Yeah, I think this answers this question quite well. Maybe we get another comment, but another question from Sarah Linauer. What is the major difference in research work in pharmaceutical companies compared to university research besides GXP?
Okay. Anything about quality, we coordinated. Joachim will talk to you. I think that the major research is in industry, there is a lot of pressure. And there is a lot of competition, which projects will gain, basically, which projects will be preceded. There is always a lot of ideas, and there is always a lot of project proposals. And the management of a company will decide which projects will be preceded and which projects are simply bid. And it's also a time and budget pressure that's there. And so one has to realize that you have to be really well equipped to withstand this pressure. And it's a teamwork issue. So in industry, probably in all the industry, but in pharmaceutical industry as such, it's always teamwork. So it's always a group, and it's always the responsibility of the group. And basically you have to fight, you have to be lucky, but basically it's the budget pressure and the time pressure, and it's a lot of competition out there because each company wants to be first. So this is the big difference to university research. I know that there is fight for budget. This is also fight for room in the university, but basically you can decide what you're doing. And this is a big difference to industry.
Okay, Sarah Lynn now responded, thank you. And is it possible to switch from research to quality control to management easily? Or will I be more area bound as a master? And also if he needs to have a PhD, or is it not that important in pharmaceutical industry?
Well, it totally depends. For instance, if you take the drug development line, and let's put it at the very end, if you want to be in marketing, as you know, pharmaceutical marketing is not done as common goods marketing, so it's done by education. So if usually they don't take PhD people there, but they take master people there. Or if you are more on the biotech side, if you want to start in a lab, it's not necessary that you have a PhD. But if you are in real research-orientated groups, then the PhD is necessary because you have learned to work on yourself. This is the big difference between a master and the PhD. You have learned how to do research. You have learned to formulate things. So I think it very much depends on in which area you want to work.
Okay, thank you again for these interesting insights. Also, thank you very much from the people that asked questions. And you have to imagine the virtual applause. I will give you the rest of it. And maybe we can move on with the questions. Maybe we have a few other questions, but we have to move on, and maybe our other speakers will respond to that. Thank you again, Dr. Karin Schaupp.
Sorry, I have to leave, but I have another meeting coming on. Thank you very much.
So moving on, after Dr. Karin Schaupp, we have another very successful woman in life science industry, Dr. Eva Pinder. She studied technical chemistry at the University of Technology in Vienna and did her PhD in biochemistry and biotechnology. Additionally, she also has a master's degree in knowledge management. And then back in 1996, she started as a director of strategic research at Biomin. And then a few years later, she got promoted and moved to Singapore for years. Very interesting step. Maybe she will give us further insights on that. And there she was responsible for implementation of research and development process management tools. And since 2001, she is the Vice President of Research and Development at the Erber AG, and since 2018, also the Managing Director of Erber Future Business. This is the incubator of the Erber Group. So, Dr. Eva, the stage is yours.
No. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this kind introduction. It's really my great pleasure to participate at this event here. I'm very glad to share with you my experiences, the scientific careers in life science industry, although this is mainly based on my experience within the Erber Group, a company group that is in the food and food safety business. Now, I have a good and a bad message to you, but I'm actually very convinced that with a very high probability, there are no linear career models for scientists in the industry anymore. As Mrs. Schaupp told us before, we have to be very flexible. I would like to try and share now a picture with you. I hope this works. This obviously, just give me a second here.
Yeah. Share screen at the bottom and then.
Does this work?
We're starting to see. Yes, you only need to start the presentation.
Yes, I think this works. This is just a picture of our research center at the campus in Thun. And what you see here is our different research team. These are specialists that are focused on different disciplines. And if you look at those like digital lab, discovery and scouting, cell biology, bioprocess development, and so on, not many of them you will find in the curriculum of the typical university study. So very much of this has been developed out of the need for certain knowledge and expertise, and people develop into these roles, even if they have some very different background in research and development.
Excuse me?
Or university studies and academic background. One example is the digital lab. Like 10 years ago, we didn't have a single person taking care of bioinformatics. Now we have 12 people who are involved in these topics. I think this is a very interesting development where we see that the requirements are changing and we have to adapt and be flexible.
Excuse me.
Excuse me. Is that there is a lot of opportunity with the life science background education. You have a lot of opportunities for development, but you have to look into interdisciplinary approaches. Of course, we have in our company a lot of people with traditional career developments, but for example, the CEO of the Erber Group, he has a PhD in biotechnology, and many of our local managing directors, they have a scientific background. This reaches from animal nutrition to technical chemistry, like I am one. So apart from the operative research, as somebody with life science background, there are opportunities in companies like ours in R&D management, of course, innovation, intellectual property management, as well as quality management, which is pretty close to the academic education that we receive. But we also have them in production, product registration, product management, HR, and for example, like me, also in event management or crisis communication. So there is really a broad opportunity to develop and and seek your careers as long as you are open and flexible.
Pinder,
So
Mrs. Pinder, hello, hello.
Is with a life science background, you have all careers open. You can even become the mayor of a city like Vienna, for example. And these are very often opportunities that we do not consider during our studies at university. What I would also like to emphasize is we need patience. You know it from your thesis works. Sometimes it's boring, it's cumbersome. And what I also see in a career in an industrial research department, you have to be patient. There are regulations, there are internal and external requirements, there are documentation and reporting issues and policies that you have to fulfill. This can be challenging, but this we have to take into consideration. This is not always just fun, to be honest. But nevertheless, last but not least, of course, you also need some fun in the work, and you need some passion for the work that you are doing. And this is very important. In the field I'm working in, this is food and food safety. Okay, it's easy to get passion because everybody wants to have safe food. But it's also about being proud of the work we are doing. And with this, I will try to share 2 other slides that I get from my colleagues from the research center. Just a question how I'm doing this. Does this work? Obviously not. Okay. So just a few facts and figures about that I would like to share. My research colleagues, they put up some statistics because in R&D it's always important to look into statistics, and they are proud of having more than 300 patents granted. They have every year more than 200,000 research hours per year that we invest into our research projects. We have more than 35 research projects that were funded by EU or national agencies. They look into even details like how many pipette tips we are using, which is close to 1 million. We used in the last year 96,000 petri dishes for analysis. So I think it's about the challenge, the patience, and the passion that we have to look into if we want to have a career in life sciences, particularly in the industry.
Please keep your headset on because we had audio problems and your presentation wasn't started and we couldn't tell you.
Okay. Because I had to put them down because I have a horrible echo.
Might be that you have your computer audio also on, so your speakers and your headsets.
Because we could hardly understand your presentation, and that was coming in on the chat too.
Okay, now we cannot hear you, Dr. Pinder. Thank you again for the introduction of your career, your insights. As you can see, it's for each of one of us, it's the first time in the annual meeting online, and also the virtual career fair. So there's still some problems to accomplish, but it's exciting times that we are living in. Dr. Pinder, can you hear me? If not, then Joachim Seipelt will have a bit more of an extra time. Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, now
yes,
we can hear
you now.
So, a question from my side, as I cannot see any questions from the chat. In my introduction, I said that you moved to Singapore. Very interesting step, and we also heard in the first presentation of Dr. Schaupp that it's important to be flexible and mobile. What were your experiences moving to Singapore, living there, working there? How did it help your career? Was it a big challenge?
Oh, I wouldn't miss it because it makes you kind of humble. Be some foreigner somewhere helps you. It's also an interesting experience for the family, to be honest. But you also learn to deal with cultures that are different than you have it here in Austria, for example. So I can recommend it to everybody to go overseas.
Okay, so I hope that you all listen to this advice, at least maybe in the mid of next year when it be easier to travel again and move to different countries. Another question, as I also mentioned, that you are the managing director of the incubator of the Erber group. What do you have any advices for maybe our students or young scientists that are interested in starting up their own company?
Well, the interesting thing is you can learn to list balance sheets. It takes some time and you need some good teachers. But to me, same as Mrs. Schaupp, it was a really good experience to get away from research into the business kind of approach. I did some reorganization. I did some major acquisition. I learned a lot. You have to be open, and it's absolutely not boring to do this. But it's a very different kind of field of discipline.
Okay, maybe there are some people interested in starting their own business, don't feel encouraged. I think it is important for Austria and also for our life sciences that we have young, innovative scientists. And thank you again to Dr. Pinder for the interesting talk. We now have to move on to Dr. Joachim Seipelt. Joachim Seifert, he did his PhD in biochemistry and then after that gained industrial experience at Boehringer Ingelheim. He's the co-founder of Avia Green Hills Biotechnology, where he was in charge of third-party funded projects and also business development. And he was additionally also a project manager of several European Commission projects. From 2013 to 2017, he was the head of the business unit at the Austria Wirtschaftsservice GmbH, Austria's funding bank, where he was in charge of programs to support startup companies and creative industries. And now he's the COO of Blue Sky Therapies and Nuvonis Technologies in Vienna. So Joachim.
So thank you very much for this nice invitation and the description. I simply start sharing my screen. So as was here we go. Now here we are. Yeah. As it was just mentioned, my career was a little bit between different fields. So I enjoyed very much doing my research at the university. but I also enjoyed very much doing stuff at companies like Boehringer Ingelheim, where I had the pleasure to do my PhD and my diploma thesis. After that, I moved from the industry back into life science at the university. So as a postdoc, then I was a group leader at the Max Perutz Labs in Vienna. But at that time, I also founded my first company, and this was Avia Green Hills. And I will give you some insights how biotech and the world works a little bit for people coming out of the academia. Then I did something entirely different to move to a funding agency, and now I'm back into biotech business actually. And I'm enjoying, I enjoyed every step of that a lot actually. But what is it actually at the beginning of a scientific career? I think everything is about scientific knowledge. So you gain, you have your university, you study a lot, and then you get a lot of scientific knowledge. And the strange thing is that throughout life, this knowledge changes. So when I was at the university, I had the impression that I had a very good overview about biochemistry and a lot of different things. In my diploma thesis, I started to get even more knowledge in fields, specific fields like gene regulation. And at my PhD, it was even more on rhinoviruses. As a postdoc, it was rhinoviruses, but it was a specific part of rhinoviruses. And as a lab head, it was even more specific to a certain topic. And so in this generation of knowledge, you feel much more specialized actually to a very small and sometimes even minute topic where you are the best expert in the world, but only 10 people on the world are interested in this expertise actually. And this ends usually in this kind of situation. 3 postdocs, 6 papers will work for food. And this is not the situation as it is in reality, because there's one main question you have to ask when you are at the end of your, when you are approaching the end of your university career. Why should somebody pay for you outside of basic research? Because as I just explained, you are the expert in the very, very, very small field of something very, very, very special, but very, very important also. So, and this is the issue where one major part comes into play. People will not pay for you for this small expertise in a certain field. They will pay for you because you are good, and there are several reasons for that. As a scientist, usually you can solve problems. It seems to be trivial, but this is not the case. For a scientist, usually it's easy to understand very complicated things, because this was what you have done for 5 years during the university and your PhD and your diploma thesis when you try to understand the papers of others. You can cope with big and sometimes even conflicting amounts of data. Just think of reading different papers on one certain topic, and you need to get together different views on how things work and what it could mean. Usually scientists do not have problems with numbers. So you can work in teams and you're used to that because this is what you did all your life, more or less. You can supervise and teach students, and this is the early phase of what we later on will call leadership actually. You are experienced with electronic devices and stuff like that, from PCR machines to computers. This is very normal for everybody actually in science. You can present your work, and a different word would be you can sell your work, and here comes a little bit of the business into play. And you have organizing skills, but the list is not exhaustive. So yeah, I think if you sit around and think about what I just said, you will find many, many other skills that are actually relevant. And these skills are the reason why somebody needs you in your company, in his company, be it a small biotech or a big pharmaceutical company. And within these as an example of kind of job opportunities within a biotech company, I just wanted to mention some items. What is going on in a biotech company, and actually what does it need to move an idea or a concept, a scientific concept, to reality? So what do they do in essence? And you will easily see that in the steps that I will illustrate in a second, there are job perspectives in every step of that. For example, everything starts with a business plan, because there's a scientific development somewhere at the university or in the company, whatever, but you need to formulate it into a business plan to find out whether this is really a situation where one would invest money, or you would invest your own money with the hope that you will not lose that kind of money actually. So what is needed here is a very good overview about the whole situation, the scientific background, but also the plan, how you would like to develop and structure your work within the company. Main important thing is also intellectual property. And this is also an entirely highly interesting, very rewarding field actually. It seems boring from the outside, but it is not actually. It's a highly sophisticated matter where you usually work together with a lot of experts actually, and can be highly interesting. And clearly it is of key relevance for every type of pharmaceutical or biotech company. Usually if you're in a company, then you also are able to obtain some grants. But it's not the case like a university grant where you simply get a huge amount, and it's not, usually at the university it's not huge, but a certain amount of money, and then you can do what you want more or less. Company projects are much more structured and organized. You usually also have partners within the project, so you need somebody who is organizing the fulfillment of the projects that are funded by the grant. So this is grant management, and it comes from application of a grant up to the finalization of the work that was done within the grant, including all the financials actually. And for example, at Avia Green Hills, I was for some time responsible for that part, and we have been very successful in obtaining huge grants from the European Union. And I think it was a very fascinating work also, because you need a very good overview about the whole project, and you need some expertise to communicate with all the scientists that are involved from different institutions actually. And so the science background definitely helps. Also, project management is clearly always a topic in biotech, in pharmaceutical industry, because many things are structured as a project and they simply do not run by themselves. They need organization. Yeah? When we now have move into a different phase, it's now product development. So what is it? So this might be chemical compounds, it might be vaccines, it might be therapeutic proteins, whatever. I'm talking mostly about biotech, not so much medtech, but in principle it's very similar. So you need certain groups of people that move that product development further, because actually the idea is that you would like to test your product later on in clinical trials to show that this is really, it has an effect on people. But product development is not just one step actually. For example, you need people that develop certain types of assays. For example, how would you measure now the efficacy of a new COVID vaccine within the patient? It's not trivial actually, and these assays need to be not only developed, but they have to be also be very correct from a quality type of perspective. Production of biotech material is clearly an issue. So if you want to do a clinical trial, you will need a bigger amount of proteins, vaccines, whatever. So there's a lot of development work, scale-up work going on. Next issue is coordination with partners and contractors. This is also clearly relevant for biotech business. And then we move into the whole field of preclinical development. So these are animal models. It's a huge field of work. It's the next field is regulatory issues. So this means before you can do a clinical trial, you have to contact the regulatory authorities, so the FDA, the EMA, and coordinate what you wish to do and get the license to do that actually in patients. And in the whole process, there's always also this quality aspect. And the quality aspect in pharmaceutical industry is different to what you do at the university. At the university, you repeat your experiments, and then somebody in a different lab repeats your experiment. And if you agree, then everything is fine. For pharmaceutical quality, this is not sufficient because you need to be sure that what you're doing is really correct. So this means the pipette is calibrated, the fridge is at the temperature it should be, because at the end you want to test your product in humans, and so there are very strict regulations on that, and quality is an issue that moves throughout the whole development actually. Then we have clinical development, so moving into clinical trials, business development, meeting other companies, cooperating with other companies, scientific communication, because you also need to talk about what you are doing in regard to investors and so on. And this is only a short list, an overview list of what types of jobs actually are there in a typical biotech environment. And actually, I really would encourage everybody to look into these different fields actually to find out whether they are interesting for you, because usually when you move out of science, you don't see all these things on your radar. And with a background as a scientist, you have very many important skills for all these different types of jobs actually. You will need to learn additional stuff, obviously, but you will learn hopefully for your whole life, and this is not a bad sign actually. And as a final word, so clearly there are some helpful qualifications that you can pick up on the way actually. There are courses, so if you're interested in one of these things, this is just it's a non-exhaustive list, but these are typically qualifications that help you in biotech actually. But the essence is actually that you have to see it like on the right side. The translation is, I never tried it before, and this is the reason why I'm sure that I can make it. And this is the attitude that you should have actually when approaching a job in biotech. So thank you.
Thank you, Joachim, for your highly encouraging talk, I would say. I have a question from Inka Titara. She thinks the same that it was an amazing talk, and that you talked about transferable skills of scientists. Usually, even though we have skills, even at the entry-level farmers, they ask for 5 years of experience in the field. Should you still apply if they ask for 5 years of experience?
So in principle, you have to understand that a job offer actually is a wish list. So it's the wish list of the perfect guy or girl or whatever. Yeah? And usually everybody wants somebody who is very young, has tons of experience and doesn't cost any money. And this is clearly not what reality is. So in principle, I very much encourage to apply for all positions that are in where you feel fit. To make it more clear, I think it's also in your application entirely important to reflect on these skills that we mentioned. So by simply sending a CV with 5 scientific publications, it will not help, because they would see you in a mindset of a scientist that is counted by publications. And you have to change that perspective to the skills-based perspective to be successful, actually. So clearly 5 years of experience in the field is a wish list. I would apply actually anyway. I think that's why not? You might miss something otherwise.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I also made the same experience in the past. So Katarina Porini said, thank you, Joachim. As you went from being a group leader to a company founder, how did you gain the necessary skills you needed, such as IP and development, for example?
Actually, you pick it up on the way you need to learn it and to understand it. And actually, I think it's, for example, the IP part. The IP part is not very complicated, because you need to understand the basic principles of what IP means, how this is regulated, and what you can do within this framework. It's like learning a very basic language, actually, but on a very basic level. And so I'm not an expert in the IP field, but I'm an expert in that sense that I can communicate with our IP lawyer, who is a fully professional IP guy, and we can discuss how our company's strategy should look like and what we could do on certain decision points. And for that, I need an understanding what is doable, what is realistic, and a good feeling about the whole IP world, actually. And this you can pick up on the way, actually. And this happened in my case also. And as all these law things have an inherent logical feature, they are not very complicated for scientists, because we like logical things, actually, because for our feeling, logical things are quite easy. And it's like learning new methods. So in science, you have to learn a new method every second year, because something develops that is, and high throughput sequencing, RNA sequencing, you name it. So why not pick up something about IP? It's not an huge issue. And the same is true with business development, because you have to understand what the concept, what you wish to achieve actually, and to pick up the tools that you need to get to that kind of situation. And I think you can pick up a lot of different things on your way, but you have to move and to simply not be shy, actually, that you might not know what to do. Maybe you will make mistakes. Actually, in my professional life, I have the saying that I do a lot of mistakes, actually, and I hope that more than 50% of my decisions are good decisions, because if this is the case, then I'm happy and everything goes well. But it is far from being perfect in the sense that you will not do a bad decision. This is not what life is about, actually. So if the majority of your decisions are good decisions, then I think you are happy and you are successful in business.
Okay, thank you again, Joachim. I have just one more comment from Matthias from 10x Genomics that also made me chuckle, and I can agree to that. He says, Great presentation, Joachim. Just a brief comment. In my opinion, and out of my personal experience, another important skill you acquired to perfection during your PhD is to handle frustration and learn self-motivation. Some attributes you need in many jobs outside academia, and also inside academia, I would add to that.
I completely agree, and that's I didn't mention that skill because it's not a positive skill in a way, but obviously it's true. Everybody has experienced that. I think this is entirely true for many different jobs. Actually, that there is frustration. For me, working mostly in small biotechs, I think one very interesting part is that there's a lot of energy from the people in a small biotech, because you are not stuck in huge and complex structures actually that avoid that you move out. So you might earn responsibility for certain items very early actually, without being properly trained and without being 10 years in the field. And that's a disadvantage, is because it's a challenge, but in the positive sense, it's very exciting actually. And if you, in these small biotechs, there are several things. So your life is not very secure actually on the long-term perspective, but you can learn a lot within a very short amount of time, and you can, should the company fail, you learn so much that you are a very valuable employee for the next biotech company or a pharmaceutical company, because you have so much experience, first-hand experience of business actually. And I think that's the most inspiring thing in small biotechs. In bigger pharmaceutical companies, obviously the setup is different. There are more hierarchical things, and that's not bad, but it's different. And within bigger pharmaceutical companies, very frequently you have the possibility to move from one department in another department. So I know people that moved from research to the IT department, or from research to quality, or from production to quality, or from quality to elsewhere. You might not have that chances within a small biotech, because you don't have 10 departments with leadership positions at the same time. And so it depends on what you wish to do actually.
Okay, thank you again. So in the name of Felix Locker and me, we want to thank to all speakers in the name of YLSA and the Young Life Scientists Austria for this very motivating and especially important presentation for young scientists. And he also thinks that it seems like there is no such thing as overqualification. I hope that all participants enjoyed the first hour and our three speakers as much as I did.